Tyrion's goatee. I mean, how are you feeling about that? I mean, he's getting a little scruffy looking down there.
I like it. Looks good.
He's bringing the sexy back.
He's looking like Obi-Wan there.
Obi-Wan. His beard reminds me weirdly of Mr. Stoll's, except for, bushier and longer, and he's a dwarf. But besides that, they've got the brown burly look going on with.
It's not kept as well.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Cast Beyond the Wall, where we're here to recap Episode 1 of Game of Thrones Season 5, The Wars to Come. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and we are brought to you by our partners at WeGotThisCovered.com. Joining me to do an epic recap, analysis, discussion of the Season 5 premiere of Game of Thrones, my host from the great state of Arizona,
Austin Lucari.
And my other co-host from the state of Nevada, Las Vegas. Sir, introduce yourself.
Daniel Stahl.
And we are really fired up to finally be back, talking Game of Thrones, breaking it down scene by scene, throwing our predictions out there, throwing analysis. And for the first time since we started this podcast, I'm not in the know. We can actually talk about legit theories like good, honest men. Unlike previously where some of us had to hide spoilers and stuff. And I want to remind everyone before we dive into our podcast discussion, make sure to go ahead and check out the recap review of the first batch of Game of Thrones episode on WeGotThisCovered.com. We had a lovely post that kind of went in and talked to us spoiler-free about what we can expect from the first 4 episodes, and they touched pretty heavily on the first episode especially, so go check that out on WeGotThisCovered.com. And before we delve in, we're going to whet the appetite a little bit. And I just want to ask you guys, it's been 10 months, 10 long months, no Game of Thrones, and it feels great to be back. Like, what have you guys missed the most about Game of Thrones?
What I have missed the most is something that I will never experience again. And that's Oberyn and the Hound. Why did they have to take the 2 best characters in the show and take them from me?
This episode had a lot of chickens in it, and that was a problem.
Yeah. There was a chicken epidemic, and who can do anything about that now? No one.
No one.
Brienne.
Freaking Brienne. You had to kick him off the... Oh, my gosh. And Oberyn, who's going to have sex with goats in Westeros now? I mean, what are we going to do, people?
Those are going to be lonely goats.
A lot of lonely goats out there waiting for Oberyn to kind of, lighten up the mood.
What I miss is the epic lines, the one-liners that get delivered by several different characters.
Chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder.
But really what I miss most about it is just getting together with friends and hanging out and watching it, and then the discussion that we get to have on the podcast. So it's good to be back. And
you guys both kind of summed it up. I miss the characters. I miss like the ridiculous characters doing really unpredictable things, even though we know them so well. And I've really missed that. And of course, missing our analytical discussion here on the show. It's really great. Best part about Game of Thrones is sitting around, watching it with friends, reacting with other people who are just as invested in this crazy show as we are. It's a great time. I think this really is one of the best shows on TV currently, so it's great to be back talking about it. All right, guys, let's go ahead and move in a little quick review mode before we get into the scene by scene breakdown here. I want to ask you guys, how do you feel about the episode? I want to start with you, Austin. Generally speaking, how are you feeling about the Game of Thrones season 5 opener this year?
It was fine. It was an opening episode that helped reacquaint you with all the storylines. It touched on pretty much every single storyline minus Arya and Bran, who we know won't show up this season, we've been told. It didn't go in depth into anything, and so that from that perspective, it was a pretty weak episode. But I think it did its job as a premiere episode.
Yeah, okay, cool. So you're feeling like it's, again, kind of a typical Game of Thrones opener, essentially, is kind of what you're getting at, right?
It's a teaser. It was like a really long trailer.
Really long trailer. It definitely setting the pieces back into play here, so to speak. So obviously not a lot going on, but there's a lot of setup going on. Even though for some characters like Brienne, for instance, it literally was a tease. Like, hey, I'm still here. I'll see you next week. And
still hate Podrick.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And screw you, Project. Yeah. All right. Hey, Daniel, how about you? How did you feel about this episode?
Okay, so for like anything that's not Game of Thrones, this was a great episode. But because it is Game of Thrones, we have to match it up against all the other episodes of Game of Thrones. And I was slightly disappointed with this episode. Not that it wasn't good, because it was overall, I'd probably give it like an 8 out of 10 or something like that. So it's still a really good score. But just for the quality of that I'm used to from Game of Thrones, I felt like it just lacked a little oomph. It was just like Austin kind of was saying, it was just a bunch of setup. It was a bunch of getting ready and revamping for the new season, which is fine, and it did its job well. I just didn't. We didn't get that like epic feeling, or at least I didn't at any moment, where I was just like, "Oh man, I can't wait to see where this goes" and stuff like that. I mean, there was obviously some very very good scenes that were very enjoyable, but overall, I thought it was a good, solid opener, but it felt like it was lacking a small something.
So the question kind of becomes: we feel like you need that type of episode at this point in the show,
Right?
Like.
Right.
Everyone who watched the show has probably been watching it for quite a while. You don't need another setup episode. They know what goes on.
Well,
This came kind of a little silly.
No. See, guys, and this is totally cool. I respect both of your opinions, and I respectfully disagree with both of you. We needed a breather. Let's be honest. Last season was a crazy train. It was off the rails. People were dying left and right. And unlike most episode 10s where we get like a time to like, it kind of cleans up a little bit and, you kind of come down a little bit after episode 9, we didn't have that. Episode 9 was just as action-packed, if not more action-packed than the season leading up to it.
Yeah, episode 10, we lost the Hound.
We lost, and the Hound, Tywin died, Arya went to Bravos. I mean, there was a lot of things that was like, that didn't get any sort of resolution, whereas in previous seasons of Game of Thrones, we had that, right? We had like that episode to kind of come down a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Usually we have, the episode 9, and then the episode 10 is like thinking about what just happened, and this is what's going to look like next season. But last year, in the season 4, there's episode 9, and then there's episode 10 where Tyrion and killed Tywin, and all that stuff happened. And so we had to have the outfall, the outcome of that.
No, absolutely, and that's exactly kind of where I'm going with it too. And here's the thing: we do need setup because you have to keep in mind. I would argue that we absolutely need the setup because our players are all in new places. Tyrion's not there. We have to figure out what's he doing over in this other place. Stannis is at the wall. Okay, and yeah, we saw that in episode 10 last year, which was also epic. But we still don't understand. I mean, we never had that time to really let it sink in. In this episode,
those plot lines were fine. The problem is we wasted valuable, critical minutes on things that didn't matter, like Brienne, and frankly, Littlefinger's scene was pretty pointless. And I mean, there were just several scenes that had no bearing on anything, and you could have delved deeper into other things, which would have made it a better episode.
Well, again, I would argue that this was in my opinion, probably the second best premiere, maybe third. Because I think season 4 was the best, honestly, because we had the freaking Hound eating all the chickens. That was
nothing beats that.
Nothing beats that. That's hard to top that. And on top of that, we had Oberyn in that scene with the brothel. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of excellent scenes, and I thought the season 4 premiere was probably the strongest. Maybe the pilot might be a little better. I don't know. Like, the pilot on one hand was so breakthrough and amazing the first time you saw it because you had never seen anything like it. But at the same time, it's hard to compare. It's almost not, because it's a pilot, it's almost not apples to apples. This one I thought had some really great moments. Yeah, it was slow. It was slow, which is something I've heard from a lot of fans out there. But I also think we need that. I think we need that time to breathe for the show overall. And I think part of it is because we do have all this anticipation building up for months and months and months. It's like, oh, Game of Thrones. But Game of Thrones is not, we can't forget, as awesome and action-packed and all that stuff as it is. It's 90% talking, 10% craziness, unless it's season 4. Mm-hmm. So this was, again, kind of like pulling back, characters kind of like coming to terms with where they're at, putting us all in a new direction and moving forward. So I give it a 9. 9 Lannister crypts out of 10.
Oh God.
So that's where I'm going. I'm going with this. I give it a 9 Lannister crypts out of 10. I do think it was still pretty great, and I'm a sucker for really contemplative Game of Thrones, which there was a lot of that going on in this episode. You can tell me I'm wrong. All that you guys can tell me I'm wrong. It's totally cool.
You're wrong as usual, but go with it.
I know. I mean, there were some fantastic scenes. I just think overall there was a couple that were a little lacking.
Okay, that's fair. And I would not disagree with that sentiment at all. Right, so let's go ahead and move into our recap of the season 5 premiere, The Wars to Come.
I believe men of talent have a part to play in the war to come.
The Seven Kingdoms need someone strong. A ruler loved by millions with a powerful army and the right family name.
Good luck finding him.
Who said anything about him?
All right, guys, so the opening to this was a very special opening in a lot of ways. Fun fact, I want to point out, this is I believe this is the first Game of Thrones season opener that didn't open with a cold open. A cold open is where, there's a scene and then it goes into the credits. Didn't happen this year. Pretty sure it's been every other season so far. This was the first flashback we've ever seen in Game of Thrones. And I've been, ever since the report kind of came out that there was gonna be a flashback and you're gonna see young Cersei, I was very interested to see how they do it. Game of Thrones has been so amazing at revealing character history without actually doing flashbacks. It's all people talking about history, which I think is one of its great strengths, is they find really interesting ways to bring in the history without it feeling weird. So I don't know. I was very curious to see how it went, and I want to see what you guys think. How did you like this flashback?
I actually really liked it a lot. I thought it was executed pretty well. I actually felt like the young Cersei did a good job of encompassing the who Cersei is in the 3 minutes that she had or whatever. But I enjoyed it. It was nice to see something different, and I thought it was executed pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was kind of cool because as someone who hasn't read the books, I haven't gotten a lot of the backstory on anything. To kind of see this and kind of see why she's paranoid and why she feels the way she does is kind of interesting. The cool thing about it is that particular prophecy could be taken a lot of different ways, I guess. I mean, there's the obvious assumption of like, who is that other queen that's going to end up taking over as Margery? But maybe it's not. Maybe it's Daenerys. Oh. Maybe it's other people, So it's really hard to say what it is. And as other people have noted, prophecies, like one of the big themes in this show is that prophecies can be taken several different ways, and always the obvious answer is not usually the right one.
Well, that's the thing about prophecies, right? They're just vague enough where they can mean a lot of different things, and it's always interesting to see. And I like Game of Thrones, the show, generally speaking, for the most part, has left most of the prophecies from the book series out of it, which has been interesting. So I'm glad to see that they're bringing this particular one in. But because the idea of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right, I think is always interesting. And is Cersei's paranoia that she's going to lose the throne to Margery? Is that going to actually cause her own downfall, right?
There's this one. There were quite a few visions with Bran.
Yeah, Bran had
and there were visions with Daenerys there in the tower. That's all I can think of.
There definitely are prophecies in the show. The books played up a lot more. There's a particular prophecy regarding the prophecy of the three-headed dragon that the show is pretty much left out. However, now that you mention it, Austin, they did still play with that idea when Daenerys went into the House of the Undying and she walked in and you see like the throne room totally snowed over, and then you see her at the wall. So there's definitely, that idea is definitely still there to some degree. Well, I actually think I agree with you guys. This was definitely a great little flashback here, and I'm glad you brought that point up, Austin, because I was right there with you. Obviously, given the circumstances Cersei's in, Joffrey's dead, so her firstborn has died before her, right? Which is kind of the prophecy, a little bit.
Part of the prophecy mentioned her children, so she's extremely protective over them because she knows that this prophecy is out there about how in some way they might have some sort of downfall or whatever. So she, again, goes back to her whole paranoia.
So can you explain this to me? The way it sounded was she was betrothed to
Rhaegar.
Okay, that's what
the prince was Rhaegar. Yeah. She was originally betrothed to Rhaegar before everything went down.
She said basically, you will be queen, but not to who you're currently betrothed to, basically.
Right. So, and that's a funny thing too. I definitely read this as I definitely read this as a prophecy related to Daenerys personally. This is a theory I've been wanting to talk about for a long time on the show, by the way, because it's been out there in the books, and I definitely think the obvious answer is Margery because she's right there, and Cersei, all she can think is through this clouded lens she has. Everything's falling apart around her, so of course she's losing her children, and she's being quote unquote taken by a queen that's more beautiful. But I still say Daenerys is going to be the one that is the one I think that the prophecy is actually alluding to.
I think that I just thought of this. Obviously, the most obvious one would be Margery, and then kind of in the back you think, oh, it could be Daenerys. But then there's also it could be someone else that we might even not know yet, or it could be Melisandre.
Ooh.
That is also what I thought too. Perhaps her and Stannis come down, and she is the queen of and it becomes Melisandre as well. So that's also a way it could be taken.
Or it could be. This is a stretch, guys, but I'm just rolling with it. It could be Sansa.
Could be.
Little thing. Wouldn't that be? Okay, that'd be kind of epic if it was Sansa, though.
One of our listeners thinks that Stannis' daughter will end up being queen.
We do have a listener who thinks that Stannis' daughter is going to apparently take ultimately Stannis is going to sacrifice himself so that his daughter can rule over the throne as the true Baratheon. It's definitely interesting. Not something at least I've heard a lot of, and it'd be interesting because his daughter's obviously around on the show for some reason, and that has
they keep hinting at her. They keep plugging her.
Even in the episode, she was there and she just sat there and she didn't really say anything, but they made sure that you saw her.
Yeah, no, that she's still there, right? Now, the other question I want to ask you too is less directly related to the ins and outs, the ends of the show, more of like a big picture. Why do you think they decided to lead into the season with a Cersei flashback?
Because she's about to go completely crazy, and once you know why.
Well, obvious answer, right? But don't you think it's interesting? A character that's been around this entire time. A character's been around for 5 seasons, quite frankly. Obviously very crucial, but by now you think we know there's all there is to know about Cersei, right? So it's interesting to me that instead of introducing a new character, they're doing a flashback of a character we've already known for 4 years.
I think she's going to be the center of this season. I believe that.
I was going to echo that. I think that this is going to be her season to either make a break. It'll be like she either makes it this season or she falls apart this season. This is her time to shine, or she's going to completely fail and things are going to go bad. I think that's kind of where she's at right now.
Well, the Lannister legacy does lie with her because Jaime doesn't really. I shouldn't say he doesn't care, but obviously, his priorities ultimately doesn't lie with ruling the 7 kingdoms or anything like that, as opposed to her, who that is definitely a priority, which I think is a great segue right into the opening scene of Tywin's funeral. So we get to see Charles dance one more time in the form of a dead body on stage, where he was probably taking a nap as they filmed the rocks.
Those things are creepy.
They are extremely creepy.
Have you guys ever seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
I've seen episodes, but I haven't watched all of it.
There's a dude with an eye patch that has that exact design on it. It's the creepiest thing. It's pretty awesome.
I need to check. I definitely need to check that out before everyone goes into the funeral room and plays. We miss Tywin, even though no one liked Tywin, and they pay their respects. It goes Jaime and Cersei go in there, and Jaime's essentially being like, "Listen, they're going to try to ruin our family legacy. They're going to try to take it. They're going to say and do whatever they can to tear us apart because they know that we are what's left of the legacy, right?" And Cersei is doing a great job at proving him right by trying to break them up already by saying, "Oh, it's all your fault. You let Tyrion go. You're an idiot." Yada yada. And
she's kind of right.
She is a little bit. Can you say?
I don't know. I would make the argument that she's wrong in the sense that it wasn't. Jaime had no idea that Tyrion was going to go and kill Tywin.
That was exactly his point. Her point was that
he didn't think about it. Yeah, I don't know. But I just I guess it's just because I like Jaime.
She killed him. Well, according to her, he killed Tywin by out of stupidity.
Yeah.
Which. Yeah. I'll be honest. He trusted Tyrion, and I don't blame him. It's his brother, and he doesn't believe his brother was actually a killer. He also didn't know his father was sleeping with his whore, Tyrion's, lover who was a whore. I mean, you know what I mean? There's a lot of things he didn't think about. So I wouldn't say I put the total blame on Jaime. However, to say that his hands are clean in the situation would not be, I don't think, it's accurate. He's definitely got his hands dirty there to some extent.
Tyrion and Jaime's relationship has always been a really positive one, and Tyrion's never done anything to like hurt their relationship. So he had no reason to not trust Tyrion in that situation. I mean, I see what Cersei's saying with, you know, stupidity. He didn't think about what Tyrion could possibly do now he'd been released, but he also didn't have any reason to not trust Tyrion. I don't think.
Yeah, and I sided with you on that, Stoll. I think you're totally right. I mean, again, there was that the brotherhood there that we saw last season, and he had every reason to trust Tyrion, not to think he would do that. So I don't think Cersei's totally wrong. However, I do think she lays on the guilt really thick. Like, really thick, and in a manner which I think is almost completely unfair. She basically is blaming him for the downfall of the Lannisters.
She's head of the family by default now, and frankly, as much as everyone may dislike her, she's the best suited for it at this point. If you discount Tyrion, because Jaime, frankly, could not run the family, couldn't do it.
Oh no, he's just not that type of person.
So she has assumed the role of Tywin, and she's given him shit for stupid choices. Basically.
Well, that sounds like a Tywin thing to do. Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right, when you put it that way. Well, the question therein lies is, okay, well, if the legacy lies with Cersei, does it really even stand a chance? Does the power the Lannisters have built over the last 30 years, does it even have a shot at surviving?
I would say yes, but not because of her. What we do have, and who we get introduced to actually in the next scene, is Tywin's brother.
Kevin Lannister. Great to point that out. Yeah.
And I mean, we haven't quite gotten to that point, but I think I don't know a ton about him yet. But I mean, that's a whole nother side of the Lannister family we've never even gone into.
We'd actually seen Kevin before. He was briefly seen in Harrenhal at the little council war room type meeting when Tywin was sitting around the table with a bunch of his generals and stuff, and Kevin Lannister was actually there as portrayed by the same actor, which is kind of surprising because I'm pretty sure nobody knew that was Kevin Lannister. Now, Kevin Lannister, I'll give you a little bit of background here on Kevin. He's kind of like the chill Lannister. He's never really been into the whole power thing. And there's actually a lot of history you get on Tywin Lannister in the 4th book after he's dead, ironically, about what made him who he was and why he was such a hard ass, essentially. His brother takes a lot more after his father. He's just kind of a chill, mellow dude and just follows whatever his brother says, right? There's definitely a power vacuum there, and Kevin could step up. I think there's a reason they went out of their way to reintroduce him in this episode, but, I mean, do you think he's really going to be a Tywin?
No, he probably won't be. I mean, nobody's going to be Tywin, but I don't feel like I know much about him yet. I mean, maybe he has the ability to really like lead the family at this point. I mean, he's ruler of Casterly Rock now because Tywin's gone. Mm-hmm. He's going to have all that money and power and basically the entire city at his disposal. Frankly, Tywin put him in a really terrible position financially and kind of the shape of the family as a whole. But, I mean, he still has the family name.
It's true, and as this episode has gone out of its way to point out a couple times, the family name is almost all that matters at times. I hate to say it, but yeah. Well, okay. So we got introduced to Kevin Lannister, so maybe we'll see more of him later. I mean, I'd imagine we'd probably see more of him this season, especially with Lancel also coming back. Hey, look, Lancel's back. Austin, did you remember who Lancel was?
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay, cool.
I did remember Lancel. He looks very, very different.
He does.
I did remember him. He was the creepy squire dude.
Yes. Yep. So going all the way back to season 1, he was Robert Baratheon's squire, the dude who was always feeding him wine, right? And he also was on the hunting party with Robert, where there was a conspiracy led by Cersei to basically drugged the wine that Robert was drinking on his boar hunt that Lancel then gave to Robert, knowing it was drugged, which then led to his death, which, hey, Game of Thrones, look, the whole show happened. So, so he knows about that, and he also was the guy who was sleeping with her, and Tyrion, that was how Tyrion was getting all his dirt on his sister back in season 2, if you recall. And the last time we saw him was the Battle of Blackwater, where he got shot with an arrow and he ran away. But guys, we have seen a new Lancel. He's been born again. Our Lord and Savior, the Seven Gods.
You can forgive me. What could you possibly have done to warrant my forgiveness?
I led you into the darkness.
I doubt you've ever led anyone anywhere.
I tempted you into our unnatural relations. And of course, there was the king. His boar hunt. His wine.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm a different person now. I found peace in the light of the Seven. You can too. They watch over all of us, ready to dole out mercy or justice.
The show hasn't done a great job of giving us a fill on religion in Westeros. We've gotten a lot, honestly, if you think about it, there's a lot of different versions of God going on right here. And it's something we might actually, it's something I think I can be very excited to say. I'm actually confident we're going to get more of this season, given where certain character stories are going. Pretty much all we've heard a lot about religion mostly is the Lord of Light, Rolar, the Lord of Light, obviously, a la Melisandre. But there's also been a lot of allusions to the seven gods, or whatever.
The old gods, the new gods, and then the Lord of Light. Yeah. That's what we know.
Right. So basically, there's the old gods, which is like the children of the forest type thing, the woods and things like that, the trees, the weirwood trees. And then you have the new gods, which is like basically the seven gods. There's like one god for all these different things. There's a whole lot. There's a lot, actually, if you ever get a chance, I think it's on YouTube, but they actually had they've had special features on like some of the Blu-ray sets where they actually go in depth about like the religion, and I'm actually very fascinated by all of it. Lancel is part of a religious sect being led by the Sparrows, so it's basically a more extreme version of the High Septons, which we've seen, but we don't get to talk to very much. And he has been born anew as a new person. He's been redeemed and forgiven for his sins. Right.
He apologizes to Cersei for tempting her.
Yes, for tempting her. And
I'm pretty sure she was the one doing the tempting.
He is praying for the immortal soul of Tywin Lannister because he needs it. But honestly, guys, I think the more interesting thing is that this guy has tons of dirt on Cersei, like a lot, like enough that could get her really in trouble if it ever got out. And he even like brings it up when he was talking to her.
Oh, he's probably dead.
That
die soon.
That's
there you go.
Well, so what else? They brought him back just to die. Game of Thrones would never do that.
Yeah, surely not.
They don't kill people.
They don't bringing people back just to kill them. Come on, that never happens.
Game of Thrones is a giant bug zapper, and the characters are just flying into it one at a time. They see the others flying into it, getting zapped and falling to the ground. They still do it.
Why can't they just be like hot pie and say, I'm just going to cook in this little inn and be content with my little life?
That's right. Or do whatever the hell Sam's doing, because that guy will not die.
Well,
Sam is surviving, my friend. Sam is surviving. You want to know why?
He says, I've killed a Thin and a White Walker. How many people can say they've done that?
What's up? What's up, Austin? That's right. He can. He has done both. You know who didn't do that? Oberyn didn't do that. I don't think Oberyn got the chance to do that.
oh snap!
But Samwell Tarly, he has in fact
fired.
done both.
I quit this podcast.
Yeah. So Samwell Tarly, we'll get to more of him a little later, but Sam is quite the survivor. So what do you guys make of what do you guys think about? Well, two things. What do you think about the return of Lancel? Where do you see that going? And secondly, we can hit on more the religious aspect. I am really curious to see what you guys think about that.
I don't think it goes much like anywhere really. I think he tells a few people and then he dies.
Really?
End of story.
Why go out of the way to reintroduce a character you're just going to kill, though?
Why? I don't know. Why did they kill any character in this show?
Wow. Geez. Austin is starting out very optimistic on the writing of the show.
He's going to start a lot of crap because he knows things, and he hinted at that already. So it's going to cause a lot of trouble for Cersei. That's probably what's going to drive a lot of the storylines forward this season, is her dealing with, one, she killed her husband, two, all her children are by her brother. She has no one to protect her anymore, no money. The Iron Bank doesn't back her. And I think this character is probably going to kick it all off, but he's going to be killed because of it.
Okay. All right. Now you're talking my language, Austin. That makes a lot more sense than he's just gonna die. Okay. Okay. Stoll, do you have any thoughts to go along with that?
I think he's going to play a bigger role, if that makes sense. Like, I kind of agree with what you were saying, Caleb. Like, they went out of their way to make sure that we introduced this character and then knew that it was him. And so I think something's up with him, and he's going to, I don't know exactly what, but he's going to be playing some sort of role that's going to be more than just trying to start something.
So here's my theory. I think a couple different things. I think one, he is going to start something. I definitely think that's going to happen. But I also think we're going to bring in, I think they're going to bring in this religious aspect. And I think what we're going to see is we're going to see how religion is manipulating. I mean, because Game of Thrones does this with a lot of different, different things in general. But I would say large organized groups. I mean, governments, families, patriarchs and stuff like it. It criticizes without being, hit you over the head with it. I think with religion, though, you're going to see how... I wonder if they're not going to show us how this religion is warping this kid, and how that is a consequence on Westeros and the kingdom itself.
I haven't enjoyed, and this is kind of as a whole, all the religious storylines so far in the show. I think have been not enjoyable because every single person is a zealot. If you're like religious at all, you're like a super fanatic, and that's really bizarre to me because that's not true to life or anything. I mean, we did see some stuff where like Ned Stark is a little religious, but like not crazy about it. But a lot of the characters we've met have been like super over the top. Lancel, Melisandre, the dude with the fiery sword, like all this stuff. It's just kind of weird.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I definitely think there's a point that because Martin does this in the books too, and I definitely think there's a point, and you can kind of understand where his view on religion comes in there. I think there's definitely a point to it, but I'd also say that I'd also say that there are a lot of people who are on this show who are spiritual. They just don't go out of the way to talk about it. If that makes sense, right? To some extent, anyway.
It could be. But it would be interesting to see like religious characters that aren't completely batshit crazy.
You mean like ones that are trying to make the world a better place, like just by helping people and
like pretty much just Ned so far that I can think of.
Okay. Austin, that's ridiculous. There are not real people in real world doing that at all, who are just good people praying and trying to make the world a better place. Definitely not those people. They don't exist.
What you're saying is Tyrion and the Hound are right.
Ooh, let's not talk about. We're not getting that far. Anyway, okay, Austin, that's a fair criticism. I don't think you're necessarily wrong. I'm always very fascinated to see how they handle it, because I think he's saying some very, very interesting things about religion. But I would also agree. Yes, I can't think of too many characters that have actually been like religious people who aren't crazy. And that's totally fair. So I appreciate that. Stoll, do you have any thoughts on that point?
On the religious things, no. I think it would be. This provides an opportunity to maybe dive into religion a little bit, but I don't know if they'll get too much into it. The show seems to have stayed mostly away from anything that could be considered like magical or, like we talked about earlier, prophetic. And religion is kind of different than magical, but in the same sense of like the Lord of Light, we've seen things that we would describe as magical, even though they're tied to a religion. And the show has mostly stayed away from those things. So I could see the show as hinting at a couple things, but not like diving too deep into it.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Well, we will see. We will see where Lancel Lannister goes. We will see where Cersei goes, and I think you're right. I think she's definitely the front runner of this season. And I do want to point out that we're now at the point where we're adapting the 4th book in the series. Cersei, this is the first book that we actually have a point of view we actually have point of view chapters from her. And hey guys, just let you know, she's freaking paranoid as hell. She is crazy paranoid. and we'll talk more about it throughout the season, but her character chapters and I mean on the show as well, but especially when you start reading, you're like, wow, this character is infinitely fascinating and just as infuriating. Like every time I read her chapter, I was like, man, this is a great chapter. The writing is brilliant. The way she thinks is just diabolical. And then it's almost mesmerizing, but it's so infuriating because she realized this woman is really not quite she's not quite living in the real world, which is what makes her interesting, I think, because she's also got all that power at her disposal as well. Well, one last scene on King's Landing that we can I just want to point out happened. It doesn't seem like there was a whole lot of it. We got some guy on guy action. It seems like HBO is finally listening to all your complaints. They're like, listen, lots of boobs, all the women nudity. We're being misogynistic. All right, they're like, all right, we are equal opportunity. Let's get some guy on guy ass in there, and let's make it a full on sex scene. So they brought it in. And it happened.
Not a single penis shown, though.
There was not a penis. That is a point of debate on online. Actually, there has to have been a penis.
There's like 4 male nudity scenes.
There was a lot of male-dominated sex scenes in this episode.
A lot of butt. There's no penis.
Which apparently is the equivalent to boobs.
Pointed out by my wife.
Like your wife. There are a lot of very intelligent women online who are making that very same criticism. And there's some merit to that.
Look, everybody out there, it's not pretty. You don't want to see it.
You don't.
You don't want to see it.
There's probably a few dozen women out there, and by a few dozen, I mean most of the population of not men who, and even some men who would disagree with you. But either way, point of the scene being though, 2 things I took from the scene. One, hey, look, Dorne. This is a really weird, by the way, a very bizarre way to reference Dorne. Hey, that birthmark, it looks like Dorne. And that's like Sunspear. Like, I don't know, they're talking about the geography of Dorne based off this dude's birthmark. I don't know, kind of weird.
Everything we know about Dorne to this point has been super sexual.
It's true. That's fair. That's consistent.
Does anyone else not think it's weird that like Margery just walked in and was like,
yeah,
what's up?
Yeah, no. I was telling the same thing. She slightly rolled her eyes for a second, and then she just like stood there and watched about 5 seconds. She's like, hey, you're making us late.
She watched her brother with her, not her husband. I don't think they were actually married, but Renly.
Oh no. She not only said she only watched. She even said she's like, listen, I'll let Renly do all the work. I just need you to put your thing in my thing, and we'll make babies. That's all I need. But there was a good point brought up that basically Loras is I guess I'm not getting married, or Marjorie's like, I guess you're not getting married to Cersei anymore. He's like, well, you better hope I still get married to her, because if I don't get married to her, that means she's not going to Highgarden. She's not going to Highgarden, that means she's your problem. Do you really want her around? And Marjorie's got that look on her face. She's like, well, maybe. So basically Marjorie's still scheming to get rid of Cersei somehow.
I don't think that was a surprise to anyone. She wants to get rid of her, and it'll probably happen.
Oh, yes. There will be blood.
Let's go ahead and talk about Tyrion and Varys. So we finally get to see Tyrion emerges from the box, and he's not exactly in his most glorious form. He now has a beard. He's like, what?
He was like a Jack in the Box.
Just pops out. Like, bing! And instead of the smiley face, you get vomiting Tyrion. Vomiting
projectile vomit.
Projectile vomit, yeah. There was a fun exchange there. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff, tons of great stuff to talk about here. I mean, of course, just on the surface, some really great lines and exchanges between Varys and Tyrion. They are a new bromance forming this season. I think ever since season 2, when you get to see them kind of play off each other, we're like, ooh, this would be more interesting to see. But more importantly, though, I think lots of great things to talk about here. First and foremost, though, Austin Lucari, and I guess Daniel. Daniel, too. What did you think? The curtain has been pulled back on the allegiance of Varys. Surprised? Happy? Excited? How are we feeling? Varys is a supporter of the Targaryens.
I was surprised. I was. I didn't think he would throw his support behind the Targaryens. Some people had pointed out that very early on in the show, season 1 actually, there's a scene where Varys is down in the basement with a guy, or in the dungeon in King's Landing with a guy, and you have like Arya hiding and like overhearing the conversation, and he's talking about Daenerys marrying Khal Drogo, and that his hope was basically that Drogo would have a baby with Daenerys, and then Drogo would be able to come over and conquer the land. Like, essentially, that's what he was trying to get after. So I guess we kind of knew he was supporting the Targaryens a little bit as it was, but I was surprised to see him throw his support behind Daenerys.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because, hey guys, don't you remember that one time in season 1 where Jorah's entire purpose was to work for Varys to, kill her? Right? right? He tried to poison her, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. Is that consistent? Yes or no? Some people, I've actually heard people online arguing, oh, that's inconsistent, it's a plot hole or whatever. I like to think that that's just Varys playing the game, because ultimately, even though I think apparently, I mean, seemingly his intentions here and ambitions are actually very, very selfless, but ultimately I still think there's that self-preservation in there, like ultimately.
Well, after she's had a baby, maybe he had no use for her.
Well, that's true. Maybe they could have killed, had she hadn't had the baby though when they tried to poison her, I don't think.
That may be true.
Because Khal Drogo wasn't dead yet.
Well, I think she was pregnant.
She was pregnant because that was before Khal Drogo gave his epic, we're gonna rape their women, burn their villages, and we're all like, yeah! Oh, wait, yeah! Yeah, before that epic speech. Because that when he comes back from that speech, that's when he gives it. When she comes back from surviving the poison, that's when he gives the epic Jason Momoa. Man, I love that speech. Even though it's terrible, it's so awesome at the same time.
As Austin alluded to, that scene back in season 1 had always made me suspicious of it, but, I never really had any confirmation of it. I was surprised to see how strongly he supported them, if that makes sense. Like, I thought maybe he was doing this on the side. If it works out, maybe not. But he was very, very open about full support to Daenerys, and you need to go help them, and like how hard he was pushing Tyrion. That was surprising to me, if that makes sense.
Why does she need Tyrion's help?
Whoa. Why does she need Tyrion's help? Austin, did you really ask that question?
Yeah.
Because she's not smart, okay? She basically tells you in the episode, I'm not a politician, I'm a queen. Duh. Why do I need Tyrion? I don't know. Because I need a brain? I need someone. I need to be okay, listen, I need to be the symbol. I need Superman, and I need Tyrion to be my Batman. I need someone who's intelligent to tell me what to do and to think, and I'm going to scare the heck out of everyone and keep everyone in line while also being a loving, gentle ruler. That's why.
Tyrion would be more like a Doctor Strange, okay? Not.
Okay, well, no, Tyrion would definitely beat the shit out of Tyrion would definitely beat the heck out of people in back alleyways with his door fist. I believe he would.
Caleb's been waiting to just like talk about how bad he felt about Daenerys for a while. I could feel it.
Listen, Daenerys needs help, and we're going to get to her very, very soon. She needs help. We're going to get to Daenerys. Okay. Just a few things I want to talk about here. So Austin, you dig the idea. I dig the idea of Varys kind of working on really on an international level with this super secret organization. Maybe the Legion of Doom type, except for they're good guys. Well, on the superhero reference kick today. And basically, they've been working the whole time trying to mastermind a way to get the Targaryens back on the throne. Ultimately, originally to get rid of Robert Baratheon, but it seems that as things have fallen apart, it's only gotten worse, and like the need for a better ruler has only gotten greater. Because then Joffrey was on the throne, now you've got Tommen on the throne, and like they were originally trying to dethrone Robert Baratheon, and that's obviously not the plan anymore. So that the plan is to just get a Targaryen over there for people to rally behind. It looks like, and I gotta say, Varys, for being a guy that has been so elusive so far, he totally sold me. Like I think he's being 100% legit right here, and he seemed legitimately. In a very un-Game of Thrones like manner, very optimistic about a ruler, like very optimistic and idealistic. He's like, listen, we have a ruler that can make this world better, though.
He's been that way before, though. He talked about Tyrion in the same light in prior seasons. Like he felt like he was the one man in King's Landing that could make a difference. He's a very hopeful person, despite him always looking out for himself sometimes. Like,
well, he's because he also realized he has to there's that self-preservation in there with him, and he also did have for a long time have to hold that position of power. Like he worked very. I mean, he makes a good point that real power you have to work. If you're not born into, you have to work very hard for it. And he didn't want to blow his cover essentially.
He threw it all away.
Well, Tyrion kind of threw it away from him because he kind of had to run with Tyrion so he could not die. Which, FYI, there was an offhand comment by Pycelle that had implemented Varys in the plot. They didn't go into depth on it at all, but they said, "Oh, I never trusted Varys." So apparently, Varys has been tied to this as well.
Well, yeah, he did kind of just disappear at the same time as Tyrion, so it would make sense.
I mean, what do you think, Austin? you're the Debbie Downer of the podcast. Do you think there's any hope there? Do you think there's any real hope for Westeros to get a ruler that could actually make the world a better place? And I was totally eating right out of his hands. I was like, yes, dude, I believe in that. A ruler that could actually help the world be better.
I do. I think that. I've always thought Daenerys was by far the best choice. Even though she may not be the best ruler, she will be someone people can rally behind. She's inspirational. She's Barack Obama. She's the yes we can. She's the energy. Now, when she comes to being actual queen, maybe she's not all that great, but she's the hope.
Is why all of her weaknesses Tyrion makes up for.
Yeah.
So if Tyrion does decide to go this way and they do decide to team up or whatever, that could potentially be the best duo.
Huge huge upgrade over Jorah if it works out.
Yeah, no, it's true. And again, I am a Jorah supporter fan, even though he hasn't had the greatest luck the last couple seasons. But Tyrion, by far, a better support, a better mentor figure. I mean, look, we saw how awesome he was as Hand of the King in season 2. This guy does know how to play the game better than almost anyone else. And the key that comes down to what Varys is saying is, but you actually have compassion. You're not out just for yourself. You actually want to make the world better. And
so Tyrion is like the good version of the Emperor, and Daenerys is the good version of Darth Vader.
Lots of Star Wars parallels today. I mean, essentially though, he would be the dude who's working behind the scenes. No one's ever going to let a dwarf rule, but right. he can clearly do the job. And think, if that had been Daenerys on the throne listening instead of Joffrey when Tyrion was the hand, think of the things they could have accomplished. And I don't even like Daenerys that much, but I mean, there could have been a lot of awesome. Now the question is, does Tyrion take that road? Second question is, does Daenerys listen to the guy? I mean, he is still a Lannister, right?
I mean, I think she eventually will, because that's where the plot's heading. I mean, it just makes the most sense at this point.
So you think Tyrion will go there?
He'll go there, and she will listen to him, but it won't be without struggle. It will take some convincing for sure.
And a lot of go ahead.
I was gonna say, and then Sir Barristan is there as well.
That's true.
He obviously, and he also he knows very much who Tyrion was, and would be very much able to tell Daenerys everything that he knows about Tyrion too.
Which actually probably isn't very good, because he didn't have a great reputation, and Barristan didn't know him personally.
Yeah, but I don't think he would. I don't think he has anything against
Did
Tyrion.
Barristan get sent away? Was Tyrion already Hand of the King?
No. He got sent away. He got sent away. He got to send Joffrey and Cersei before Tyrion came to King's Landing. We're already talking about Daenerys enough now. Let's go ahead and hop into that storyline. We get reintroduced to Meereen, and that epic statue getting pulled down. The one in the trailer? Well, I guess Austin didn't watch the trailer. But it's in the trailer, and the way that Austin, it did that stereotypical trailer thing where it's like giant thing falling over, and you feel like it's a climactic moment. Oh no, it's like the opening scene of her stuff. Just kind of a funny way.
This made me sad. I was not happy about this at all, because she is literally destroying the culture of that city, and that's not a good thing. She's ISIS. That's what she is right now.
Ouch.
It's kind of bad. Like, you can't, if you take away the culture of a city, you're not going to win their hearts and minds. Like, you're not going to. And I think we'll see that a little bit later on when she has a discussion with Daario. It definitely shows her ignorance as far as the difference between being a conqueror and crushing things, and being a leader and integrating yourself into a society and a culture.
And she's very, this goes back to her being she's very black and white. Well, you guys are doing it wrong, so destroy it.
I'm gonna fix what's wrong with you, right? I'm gonna go. Yeah. It's a form of colonization, really, and we know how that went for.
Well, the slavery is one thing. That was about freedom. That was about.
Yeah.
I mean, that was probably a necessary thing for her to do, and probably something she shouldn't compromise on. But destroying the history of a city and the things that people look to and identify with, that's a bad move.
Well, clearly she doesn't understand the culture, the very culture she's trying to rule. Is what it comes down to. Instead of going out of the way to actually learn what the people need, she assumes, well, I know better than what you need, right?
Because she sees them as these evil people who allowed slavery, so I'm just going to change it and make it where it's not that way.
When she's not just destroying slavery, she's destroying fighting pits, which again, everything. Fighting pits, she's not letting people fend for themselves the way they need to. It's very, she's definitely tearing down an entire culture there. And also that is a really great point. And obviously we'll talk about that more when we get to the scene with Dario. But first things first, we get to see the, not Grey Worm Unsullied, who I was like sitting there, I was like, wait, that's not Grey Worm. I mean, no, maybe they recast it. I was literally sitting there for I was talking to people I was watching with, and we're like, that's not Grey Worm, is it? Because they made a point to introduce him as someone, and we're like, well, maybe they recast him because we've seen Game of Thrones do that before. And then they killed him, and I was like, whoa, and not to mention that was really creepy, guys. Throat slit while he's getting sung an Unsulliby. I was like, what the heck's going on here?
Unsulliby?
Yeah, it's like a lullaby for the Unsullied. Get it? The Unsullied getting the lullaby. It's really weird. So they're getting their sexual fix without actually getting their sexual fix, right? They're getting that. They're still seeking that warmth and love feeling in the cuddle time.
It's motherly. They weren't raised by parents.
Yeah,
it's comforting.
Very comforting. And then you see the boob, and you're like, why is there so much boob in this scene? And she's humming, and all of a sudden blood on that they did it. When they shot that scene, when he looks up and you see the prostitute with blood all over standing next to the son of the harpy, man, that was creepy. I'd almost had a horror movie creepy. At least I thought so. What are we thinking here? Sons of the Harpy. What are we thinking, guys?
Well, this is it seems to be because this scene happened right after the crushing of the statue, so someone within the Sons of the Harpy, this group is responding. You're destroying our culture. Well, we're going to respond by killing your people. This is sort of their answer back to what Daenerys is doing. It seems like.
So she's creating her own enemies. Go figure. And then next scene, kind of following up on that, would be I thought there was an interesting. We returned to the romance between Melisandre and Grey Worm. I'm just so confused as where this is going.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. And she was very because she seemed so confused. She was like, "Why did Unsullied go to a brothel?" She's almost as in a hopeful kind of way. So maybe there's something we could do.
So you guys can do it, right? So my place, that the back little room there next to Daenerys' cabin.
Sunday, not. Why do you come?
Why would an Unsullied go to a brothel?
I do not know. I must go.
But yeah, finally getting on to Daenerys, we see her reaction to the Sons of the Harpy.
He did not risk his life fighting for his freedom so cowards in masks could take it away. And I did not take up residence in this pyramid so I could watch the city below decline into chaos. What was the name of the man you lost?
White Rat, Your Grace.
I want him buried with honor, publicly, in the Temple of the Graces.
The Sons of the Harpy will hear that message.
Make them very angry.
Angry snakes lash out. Makes chopping off their heads that much easier.
What? That's brilliant logic, Daenerys. You're totally gonna get work done that way, antagonizing your foes.
I mean, you got to draw them out. If they're angry, maybe they make a stupid decision.
Okay, that's possible, but here's the thing. She hasn't put in the time or effort to learn her enemies. If she knew that they would do that, that's one thing. She doesn't know who these dudes. She doesn't know anything about these guys. She doesn't know who they are, what they're fighting. I mean, obviously, she gets their reaction to her, conquering their cities and things like that. I get that. She gets that, but she doesn't know that that's going to work. It just doesn't seem like a very effective strategy.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, we don't know how powerful they are, or anything really about them at this point.
Yeah, we don't know exactly what their plan is or what they're doing or what they want. So, I mean, they want their city back, I'm sure, but how and what they intend to do is completely unknown.
So here's what I'm getting at, guys. Daenerys Within 1 season or 2 seasons, I guess, she has gone from the Great Liberator to the British Empire, where she's going in and conquering countries with no real understanding of the culture at all and just occupying them for no reason. Hey, what's up, guys? I want to get bigger and be a queen, so I'm just going to chill out here for a while. And I'm going to take your resources, your buildings. Yeah, I don't know. Interesting, right? Interesting how quickly that change happened. But we get on to that cultural conversation between her and Daario, right? So her and Daario, she actually does seek some counsel, and Daario actually gives a very interesting point of advice, which I didn't expect to hear because I don't trust Daario. But very interesting point of advice. She gets approached by I can't ever say his name, Locquar or whatever. I can't say his name
either.
Basically, the dude from last season whose father was executed, and he went with Daario back to Yunkai to make some sort of treaty or whatever, and they returned this episode, and he said, hey, let's reopen the fighting pits. It gives people a way to be entertained. They connect with that. It'll give some of these former slaves a way to make some money. Gives it, honestly, as much as me personally would be against the idea of gladiatorial combat, I'm like, he makes a pretty good argument for why you should reopen these fighting pits, right? It's going to be good for the city. Ultimately, it's going to bring money in. All sorts of good things are going to happen. But then she's like, no fighting pits, because
she says something like, "So you mean slaves fighting slaves," or something like that, and then he says something like, "No, it'd be free man versus free man," or something like that. Didn't he say something like that?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And to Austin's point about understanding the culture, and Daario brings this great point. He's like, yeah, reopen the fighting pits. Because to a lot of these people, the fighting pits is their chance at success, right? It's a way for them to it's American Idol. It's a way for them to get out there onto the stage, everyone's watching, and for them to succeed. I mean, with higher stakes, obviously, than American Idol, but they get out there in the public eye, they fight their way up, and like Daario said, hey, I made a lot of money in doing this. I think his first fight when he was 16, right? 16, I think, and he said, I made money, and then I made connections, and ultimately, I am now a sellsword, which is such a great thing, but I'm now a sellsword fighting for my own, because I entered those fighting pits, which is just to bring a different perspective of, hey, I'm someone who grew up here, and these things aren't necessarily, while inherently probably not a great thing, good could come from it, right?
It's like, it's sports, essentially, in the Game of Thrones world. It's a way for poor people or unintelligent people or people who have no other options to better themselves. And if it's not slaves, you're not forced into it, I don't see a problem with it at all.
Well, and it's also a good way for rich people to gamble outside of just the poor or low-class people. It's a distraction. Like you said, it's a sport. It's a thing to keep people's minds off what's going on. It's a way for people to bond, and honestly, a great way for people to bond together, right?
To keep them from thinking about the fact they could be roasted by a dragon at any moment.
Yeah, exactly. Which leads right into Daario's second point. Listen, Daenerys,
Let the dragons fight in the fighting pit.
She's like, yeah, let the dragons fight in the fighting pits. Listen, here's the thing, Daenerys. Listen, we get it. You've got this awesome army of Unsullied, but no one likes you because you have Unsullied. No one likes you because you freed the slaves. They like you because you got mother effing dragons. So you better let these people see that you've got mother effing dragons so they can love you that much more, right? And I thought that was kind of a cool way to bring the dragons back into the fold. And he's right. He's totally right.
He's right about the people of Marine, and he's right about the viewers of the show. Bring back the dragons.
I think every point he made he was pretty right. He was dead on. I mean, everything he said was correct until Daenerys went down there, down to find the dragon. She's like, listen, I might take that advice. I don't have Jorah tell me anything else, so I'll just go down there and check it out. You know what she found? She found some really pissed off teenagers who didn't have lunch down in that crypt. That's what she found.
They've been eating something.
And
they are way bigger.
Yeah.
Those guys were huge.
It's always been interesting to me because Cersei and Daenerys are two of the most powerful women in the world of Game of Thrones, and even from a writing standpoint, they're very strong characters. And it's interesting to me that this season, both of them have a chance. I don't know if this will happen, but both of them have a chance to kind of start backsliding, if that makes sense. Which I just think it's interesting that both of them are hitting that point in their arc of maybe backsliding, maybe they've made some mistakes, are happening kind of at the same time. I think it's kind of interesting how those storylines in the sense are kind of parallel.
Yeah, Daniel, that's a great point, and I hadn't thought about that, but there is definitely a parallel there. You have these two extremely powerful people who have done great and terrible things, ultimately. And they've reached their peak, right? And they're at the point where they're both starting to make mistakes, though. They're starting to slip up. And they both could lose power, right? With Daenerys, it's losing the respect of the people through the culture. And with Cersei, who's already lost those things.
Right. Or even Daenerys losing control of her dragons.
Over the dragons, yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I'm glad you made it up.
It's a theme throughout the show. I mean, that is a very good comparison. But even like Tyrion did the same thing, and he crashed. He hit rock bottom as a result of hitting his peak and making mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think there are other characters that are not far behind, but that is one of the major themes.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Tyrion's one of the few and what's interesting about these characters is they're lucky enough to make these kinds of mistakes, hit rock bottom, and survive. Because most people who hit rock bottom on the show are dead. Tyrion being one of the few exceptions. So, and we'll see. I mean, we'll see if Cersei survives rock bottom, if Daenerys survives rock bottom, if either one of them make it there. I don't know. Daenerys, I still feel has she's not in a great spot right now, but I feel like she's got quite a few more mistakes to make before she really ultimately loses power because, she still has dragons. And like Varys alluded to earlier in the episode, she's still got the name of Targaryen, which means something. And I think Daenerys has there's a lot of weight to that. She's the mother of dragons. Even if she doesn't control them and they're lighting people on fire, it's going to take a while before that name really loses that reputation. And she's also got 18 other titles.
I was going to say, she has a lot of names.
Lots of names. So do you think her ego's finally starting to shatter? She's starting to having a little bit of a reality check finally?
I think she's gone up and down on that. Like, I don't feel like she's ever gone full-blown egotistical, maniacal kind of thing. Like, she has moments where she's like, I need to be strong because I'm a queen, and then moments where she's like, I don't know anything.
I think that she has never been super egotistical. She just presents herself that way because of her insecurities or whatever. I think she definitely doubts herself a lot. And then to cover that up, she she presents herself as overconfident and cocky and things like that, to cover up what she's actually I don't know what I'm doing, so I've got to pretend like I do, type of mentality a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's totally true. And we talked a lot about that last season, and I think that is totally on point. She has to overcompensate. So, I guess that's a good point. She's not gone power hungry or anything like that. So, although, guys, the line, can I just say the line that really I'm a queen, not a politician, shows her total lack of understanding what it means to rule. A total lack of understanding. And that is why she needs Tyrion Lannister.
It's funny. It's an especially funny line for someone that has built her entire kingdom on freeing people. It's like, oh, well, I've gotten rid of all your masters, but now you have a queen. You have a ruler. It's kind of self-defeating.
But I definitely think that shows that she is out of her depth. And if she can't get someone like Tyrion, she is not going to make it. She's just not. She needs someone who understands what it means to actually know the people, work with the people, rule the people. For me, that line highlighted where her character's at right now. She's got all this power, but she has she doesn't have an inkling of what it actually means.
Which is why she's stuck in Marine, because she doesn't really know how or what to do with what she has.
Guys, I just want to say, if we had gone back to when you first started watching Game of Thrones, would you ever think she'd still not be in Westeros in season 5?
This would have been a long time.
A long time. 5 seasons, guys, and she's still not there yet. Let's go ahead and move on to a different storyline briefly, which is the Vale. We did get a little peek at the Vale this week, where we get to see Littlefinger's, doing his thing, making sure that Robin Arryn is being trained up, so to speak. And there were a couple interesting pieces of dialogue. I think, that was the other character who was talking about family name. It was Littlefinger. He said, the guy he was talking to, the Lord over there, was saying he's not really good at anything. He's like, he can't fight, he can't talk, and he's like, some people, the greatest gift they have is their name. And he's right. No one cares if it's Robin who's totally incompetent, but he's an Aaron. Anyway, point said, though, I thought it was interesting to see my favorite, the best part about this whole scene, though.
Lord Aaron will never be a great warrior.
Great warrior? He swings a sword like a girl with palsy.
I don't know. What did you guys think about the Baelish Sansa stuff this week?
I mean, to me, it felt like, hey, they're doing something. Just remember that they're here, kind of. What I felt like there was a couple other scenes like that, but yeah, I didn't think like too much of it. Just hey, Littlefinger and Sansa together, they're heading somewhere. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, just kind of hanging out, watching Robin do stuff. So I agree. And honestly, and it was honestly when Austin called this like a trailer, I think it was pretty. With scenes like this, it almost was. It was like, hey, he's in the Vale, and him and Sansa are heading somewhere. Where are they heading? We don't know.
This scene even transitioned, I think, or transitioned from the Brienne scene with Brienne and Pod. It went from that scene and transitioned into them in the cart.
Right.
And then, or was that the second? Maybe that was the second time.
It all happens. It all happens very closely together. You see that very brief scene where you see Robin fighting, and basically he's like, "Listen, all we need is people to rally around Robin, Aaron." Then we come back, we see a scene with Brienne. She's crapping over Podrick because that's what she does, and then we come back and it does segue. It goes. It cuts straight into the scene with Sansa to show how close Brienne was, not just to Arya but to Sansa, and she missed both of them.
Yeah. Yep.
So
and I felt the same way about the Brienne scene, just since it transitioned there, like just a hey, heads up, they're here.
I don't know what they're doing with. I don't know what they're going to do with her this season. I am totally clueless. I'm curious and hopeful that it's something that interests me. At this point, I have zero interest in that storyline, which is sad, but I just don't really care where. At this point, I don't really care where Brienne goes. I like her character, but she's in such a pointless, useless point of the story. It's like, okay, so you're looking for two people who are not findable, essentially, because one of them doesn't want to be found, and the other person you think is just might as well be dead.
I felt their storyline last season was kind of boring, and then it got kind of climactic. It got really climactic with the whole fighting the Hound, and then that was it. And I didn't feel like it didn't seem like that's what they were building up to. Like it felt like they're still building up to something, and then it just happened along the way. But I have no idea like where they're going with it, and so I'm kind of on that storyline right now.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. If we don't hear from them from a couple weeks, I won't be too sorry.
I don't even know what to say.
He hinted it was far away. So there's in Game of Thrones, that means a lot of different things. He could be sitting here across the ocean.
I guess they did hint, like, we're going west. We're not going towards the finger. I haven't really thought about it. I don't even know what is west of that area. Maybe is River Run west?
You know where it is Run? Well, River Run is actually southwest. You know it's actually west?
What's that?
I don't know why they go there, though, but you know it's west? Winterfell. I don't know why they would go there, though. That'd actually be a terrible idea, because it's Sansa and, Bolton's.
Maybe he has something set up with Stannis already, and they intend on retaking Winterfell.
Dude, that would be so epic.
That would be interesting.
That would be
Stannis
great.
would be, I think, a reasonable ally for him at this point.
Right. Well, and here's the thing. He could play both sides, too, that way, because he's still got the Tyrells, right? He's still buddy with the Tyrells, but then he's also playing the side where he's friends with Stannis, trying to help him reclaim the North, right? With Sansa Stark.
Well, they may not like Stannis, but the Tyrells would probably totally support the Starks returning to the North.
They probably wouldn't support Stannis.
Just Sansa right now.
Right. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways, and that's what I've been really wondering going into the season again, because for me and Dan who have read the books, like this is still all new territory, and it's very interesting because I'm like, because we know Littlefinger is going to use her, and he's going to try to make new friends. Who's he going to be friends with? The Boltons? I don't know why he'd be friends with the Boltons. I don't know.
I don't want him to go be friends with the Boltons.
Please no, please God no, because they're not even reasonable people. I don't know, like they're not reasonable people. Like he makes friends with reasonable people, but Stannis though that would make sense.
It could be going to Harrenhal.
Who's in Harrenhal?
That's his.
Oh well, oh crap! You're right. That's his home. I guess he owns that. That's it. I forgot about that. He could be going to Harrenhal. He could be going to River Run. We never had a chance to really check on Edmure Tully and the Blackfish since the Red Wedding. So there's that possibility. I don't know. It could go. It could just go a lot of different directions. I suppose.
Yeah. Is Frey's place down there somewhere?
He's in the south too. He's at like the Westeros gets a little skinnier at a certain point. There's only like certain bridge you can cross, and that'd be the south. I don't know why he would take Sansa Stark to the Freys though, because Freys are kind of crazy. Obviously, he not only is he going to try to make friends, he is going to try to find a way to create chaos. He will. He will try to find.
Control. If you control the Freys territory, you control a lot because that's a gateway between the North and the South, right? So
Yep. We'll go ahead and move on and wrap up to the final storyline this week. Where's Littlefinger going? You all know I like to know, and I can't wait to talk more about it. But that is yet remain to be seen. But let's go ahead and move on to the Wall. Kind of close out the show, the discussion, and talk about the Wall. There was a lot of very interesting goings on at the Wall. So Austin, first off, we kick off our reunion at the Wall with none other than Samwell Tarly, talking about how awesome he is with his war skills.
I don't understand how he hasn't tripped and fallen off the wall yet.
Because, Austin, he's too good for that. Because he's Samwell Tarly. He's killed a Thin and a White Walker. Who else says they couldn't have done that?
The Giants could use him as a basketball. Giants are going to be the sinners because obviously they're very tall. They're just going to dunk Sam into some sort of hoop. I don't know.
Some sort of hoop? The wall? That's the hoop, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Wow. So apparently, Alistair Thorns survived. Now, remember last season when we left the battle at the Wall, we weren't sure. We saw him getting dragged off into a hole, and we legitimately weren't sure if he had survived or not. Well, guess what? Not only has survived, apparently he has been elected Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. I didn't expect that, honestly. Not going to comment. I'll just say it's not exactly how I expected things to go. We'll put it that way. Yeah. And so that's interesting. Alistair being not a very good person. However, I will say, I would love to see, even though we know he doesn't like Jon very much, I would love to see how he and Jon interact going forward, because there was not only once, but I believe twice in that finale where he had a talk with Jon where he's like, you know what? You were right. He didn't say it like that. He wasn't that nice. But he's like, you should have sealed. He's like, tell me I was wrong. I should have sealed the tunnel, right? He was very reluctant to admit it, but he kind of admitted that Jon actually had made a good call, right? I don't know. Maybe there might be a little more respect between those two guys there. I don't know. If you guys have any thoughts on that at all.
I think Alistair, he basically said it in episode 9 of last season's look, it's nothing against you, but when I start questioning myself and my decisions, everything falls apart. You can't do that as a leader. And I think that's his kind of his stand on things. It's it's not you, it's not anyone. It's I have to follow through with my decisions or everything will fall apart.
He's almost respectable. He's growing on me, which is really weird because obviously in the first season or two, we did not like that guy. But I don't know. It's kind of growing on me a little bit. But more importantly, outside of Alistair Thorne's survival, Jon meeting with Stannis. But before we meet with Stannis, we got we checked the box. If we were playing a Game of Thrones drinking game, we totally had a shot right here because Melisandre has a creepy moment for no reason at all.
You're not cold, my lady.
The Lord's fire lives within me, Jon Snow. Feel. Are you a virgin?
No.
Good.
To me, and I think probably Daniel is getting ready to say the same thing, is confirmation that he has noble royal blood. Because the only other person she cared about was Gendry, and that was for reasons that we already know about. She knows that Jon Snow is half Targaryen. And I just...
Oh, snap. I totally didn't... She probably does know that, doesn't she?
She does. She knows that she can
Assuming
sense
that we're
it
completely
with her
right
crazy
about that
woman.
What are you talking about, Stoll? That's a fact, even though it's not...
It's fact.
It's nowhere to
that
be
was
found
predicted
in
on
anything.
this podcast, and
So
therefore
it
it
has
is
to be
correct.
Yes, and we predicted on our podcast in our bonus episode where we talked about There's
agree, though. I
Westeros.
think
Yep.
She sees there's something in him that is extremely valuable to her, and she's going to use it at some point.
Guys, now once we get off the creepy elevator of creepy sex, we get to reunite with Stannis. I gotta say, guys, he might have run some brownie points with me this week. He said a few things I really liked. He's like, listen, you know who's sitting on the throne in Winterfell? Yeah, Bolton, the guy who stabbed your brother in the back. Don't you want vengeance? What I'm trying to get at here, do you think that maybe Stannis is the only hope for Stark vengeance we actually have now? I mean, think about it. We haven't had it. We still haven't had like that moment of like, oh, the Starks got there was justice there, right? Is Stannis the best hope we have for that at this point?
It's coming, Caleb. Don't worry. Arya's in training.
Actually, I was going to say the same thing. Short term, yes. Long term, no. This is not the best chance we have. Arya, long term, is the best chance we have for Stark. Vengeance.
Okay. I mean, you guys are probably right. I think it's an interesting idea that this is a man who is actually ready to take action, and I think he actually believes it too. I mean, obviously he's trying to, recruit Jon Snow to his cause, but I also think as a Baratheon, and they mentioned last season, like, hey, we share this common family bond, and I think he legitimately, A, he wants it for the North for his own means, as to take Westeros, but B, there's that moment where you're like, yes, I do want vengeance for them. I do kind of want to root for you in that case. And I also think that his idea to recruit the wildlings, while not necessarily the most practical idea, actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it. And you're like, okay, these people who are all trying to get on the other side of the wall anyway, why not, instead of trying to like kill them or cast them back over, why not try and recruit them and then make them national citizens? That makes sense, and I think it's actually a pretty smart move, and I actually think it's very respectable. For a man I don't like very much, I might point out.
No, I totally agree. But here, the thing is with that, if you just let the wildlings loose, say you were like, fine, you want on the other side of the wall, that's fine. They are going to destroy the countryside because they don't have settlements, they don't have farms. They're used to just taking from the land. And it would essentially just overpopulate the entire north, despite everyone being killed already. And if they have an army, if they have a purpose, if they're given supplies and stuff like that, it keeps them from just annihilating the countryside. It would be best for all parties involved, frankly.
I actually think this plan was flawless if it wasn't for one thing. I actually was like, dude, this is probably the best plan Stannis has come up with in a long time.
Do not bend the knee.
Exactly. Mance Rayner. The whole thing hinged on Mance Rayner. Mance Rayner, a man who won his respect from the wildlings by just being a strong man, by being a man who rallied around them, not because they needed a king, but because they needed to survive. Everything that man stands for would have been compromised had he bent the knee. Everything, which I think leads to a very that conversation between him and Jon is so good. I think that was probably the strongest scene of the episode, to be honest with you.
You brought them together to save them because none of them has survived the winter, not if they're north of the wall. Isn't their survival more important than your pride?
Pride? Fuck my pride. This isn't about that.
Then bend the knee and save your people.
They followed me because they respected me. Because they believed in me. The moment I kneel for a southern king, that's all gone.
And how many tens of thousands are out there right now? How many women? How many children? And you won't go out and rescue them because why? You're afraid of looking afraid.
Oh, I am afraid. No shame in that.
If he did, he wouldn't be the same person. He wouldn't be a king anymore.
He had some really nice, solid lines of, prophetic, not prophetic, but wisdom in a sense. That conversation with him was really good.
Yeah, and it just highlighted what that character's been all about. And I was really sad when this happened. I mean, all this went down, and which is funny because I think this is another moment in which the show is actually really topping the books in my mind, because I did not. This scene, well, and we're going to get more in detail on this in a second, but the scene in which Mance Rayner's burned not remotely is emotional. And I think the show's done a great job. The actor who's been playing him has done a great job at making him sympathetic and likable and relatable. And it was really sad for me to see him go, because I wanted him. On one hand, I didn't want him to compromise who he was. But on the other hand, I was like, listen, dude, and John's right. If you do this, it could make life easier for everybody, right? But then he compromises himself, and he compromises the wildlings at that point. And it was sad to see him go. And the look on his face when Jon told him he was going to burn, like his whole composure changed if you go back and watch it again. Like he's like, all right, how are they going to do it? Beheading? are they going to shoot me? He's like, burning. And he's like, he just sits there for a second and gets really uncomfortable. And you see his whole composure change. And he's like, crap.
This is a bad way to go.
Bad way to go. And it's not only because it's painful, because he knew that would mean that he knew, when you burn alive, you're going to scream. Like, because it's slow, it's painful. I don't care how manly you are or whatever, you're gonna scream.
And you could see him struggling with that. Like, he was trying so hard not to scream. Like,
yeah, and the thing, he was struggling even with that decision at that point. I felt like, and once he knew he was burning, he's like, look, the whole point of me dying right now was to maintain my legacy, and if I'm burning alive and screaming for mercy, then do I do that?
Right.
And I still maintain that image that I've worked so hard to build.
Right. He said he didn't want to be remembered as a guy who just went out like that,
And then Jon saves his legacy for him.
Can I just say? I'm just going to say this, guys. Two things. Mance Rayner is a badass. Okay. For not compromising himself. I mean, as much as I don't know if it was honestly, in a sense, it was a Ned Stark decision. It was respectable. Not necessarily the smartest thing to do, but respectable. And you're like, you know what? I understand and I can respect that, and I can't fault him for doing that. So I think it was ballsy and respectable. But two, when Jon lit that arrow and you just like look up, and I was like, oh, you just stepped on Stannis. He is gonna burn. He is really not making friends doing that move, because the whole point.
Did you notice the parallels
between
Jon Snow and Ollie?
Oh,
well, standing on the steps, they shot the arrow. They kind of give everyone a look like, "What? What are you going to do about it?"
He didn't do the nod, though. He didn't do the nod.
Didn't do the nod.
He did not do the
nod. Frankly, that he didn't do the nod.
Well, Ollie is there, and Ollie is apparently going to be around, FYI. But no, I think that says Jon. They're doing a great job at building. Finally, starting to build Jon up. There for a while, we were kind of like, I don't know about Jon. But this is a moment again that Simonson. This is a man of honor, and he's like, listen, no man deserves to go out burning at the stake, because guess what? No person deserves to go out burning at the stake. And he knew that it would destroy Mance's legacy, so he shot him with an arrow. I thought it was an awesome move. It was a move of compassion. And he was also trying to protect, the man who Mance Rayner was, because Jon respected that, even if he didn't agree. And that was ballsy, though, because he's stepping on the toes of Stannis Baratheon and Melisandre, which are not people you want to cross. And not to mention, who knows what Alistair Thorne's going to say or Janos Slynt are going to say about like the fact that he did that. I mean, he's really putting himself out there by doing that in a way that could actually get him killed.
There will be a backlash to this, for sure.
Oh, man. That was just so great. I was so satisfied when you just saw it, and you're like, oh, Jon Snow, freaking badass. Okay. I loved it.
I think he's going to be in one of the toughest positions that he's ever been in, but that will give us the opportunity to see what he's really capable of.
Why do you think he's in a tough position?
Well, especially after he shot the arrow.
I don't think that was that big of a deal.
What? Are you sure? I think it's a big deal.
I feel like it was. The way it ended, I was like, what are they going to do to Jon? They need him.
Yeah.
How much do they need him?
Well, he's the only one up there with any intelligence.
Oh, well.
I mean, that's true, but
yeah.
I don't know if they see that.
Not.
But I think Stannis is going to be putting a lot of pressure on him. He's saying I'm the king, and he's at the wall, and he's going to ask a lot out of Jon, and then Melisandre's going to have some weird thing going on with him, and then he's also got this situation going on with the wildlings, and then what is his position at the wall, and then I think he's got a lot going on in his head, and he's got to sort out what decisions he has to make based on these things. So I just think he's in I don't think he's in a chance of dying, but I think he's in a position where he's going to have to make a lot of tough decisions.
Well, I'll say this. He's going to be choosing loyalties in a tough way. Because right now, he's kind of in a three-way split, right? He's lived with the wildlings. He knows the wildlings. And some of him actually believes in their cause, which is pretty basic to survive, right? And he knows that the wildlings, if they kill them and make them the enemy, it's actually going to make things harder when the White Walkers come, because they're going to be whites, right? So on that sense, he's like, yeah, okay, I want them to stay alive, and we can use them. Supportive to them. That's a loyalty. He's loyal to the Night's Watch, which is to protect the wall. But in a sense, a lot of people in the Night's Watch also think that he's there to they're there to stop the wildlings, which Jon obviously knows is not the case. And then thirdly, you've got Stannis, who's going to be breathing down his neck and pressuring him to do who knows what. Because he sees Jon Snow as a very valuable character. We just don't know to what effect exactly he's going to try and use him. So I think he could potentially. There's a lot of potential for him to get in some pretty rough spots right now. Although
it's true, Stannis hates him right now. The wildlings hate him, and the Night's Watch hate him. Everybody hates Jon.
Okay, one last point I want to bring up the story and related to this is before the season came out, George R. R. Martin had announced that the show was killing characters that he himself had not killed, and that happened in this episode. Mance Raynor's dead. Now, the book did it differently. In the books they killed a man who was disguised as Mance. They burned him alive, and you find out later that Mance actually wasn't dead. But I'm pretty confident, based on how this scene played out and based on like the interviews with the actor and everything, they're not bringing Mance Rayner back. Like, they actually killed him. And that's going to have some pretty big implications. I mean, obviously, I don't know exactly where that story with Mance is going in the books because the books aren't done yet, but I would say he's a pretty big player that they just totally removed from the fold. So we're definitely seeing some deviations here. I know, Daniel, I mean, as a person who's read the books, I mean, how are you feeling about this?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, like you said, he doesn't die in the books. He hasn't done a lot since that incident happened in the books, and so I didn't see him as like that important, really. So from that perspective, I can maybe see why they went ahead and just did that. But if they didn't come in the books, then they have a plan for him in the books. So it'll just be interesting to see how what the show is doing, or to move around that fact.
Mance Rayner can die. Who else is? I mean,
right.
I mean, what else are they going to do? Who else that seems apparently important do they just knock off all of a sudden, right? And I'm actually very supportive of the change. I actually was really kind of annoyed when they brought him back in the book. I was like, really? Okay. I mean, his death, I will say his death was very anticlimactic. The way the show does it was much, much better. So, but obviously he didn't die. So like, oh, okay, I guess there's a reason it was anticlimactic. But I was also very annoyed. I was like, oh, we're starting to get into fantasy territory where you fake kill a character and then bring him back via magic explanation. So I don't know. I think the show is really, really striving to avoid the mysticism as much as it possibly can here. So guys, I guess that means we're just gonna have to accept that the books and the show are a different thing now. Is that right? I mean, we've already been talking about it last year. We talked about a lot last year, but this is definitively where the show is making a break with very specific storylines that are actually going to have.
I'm kind of excited for you guys about it. You guys, I don't know how excited you are, but to watch the show not knowing what's going to happen is such a fun experience for me.
Oh, I'm excited about it. Yeah.
I'll be honest, Austin. I am so excited. It's gonna be fun to watch it because when I started watching Game of Thrones, none of my friends watched. And then I read all the books after season 2 had ended. So I'm really thrilled and excited to experience the show with a lot of my friends and the community out there who don't know what's going on. I honestly have never taken that much enjoyment from knowing all the information. I mean, it's kind of fun, like hearing what people think and being like, oh, it's totally not going to happen that way. That's kind of fun. But I think it's a lot more fun to like be able to experience the holy crab moments with friends. I'm excited. Like the stuff with Sansa and Littlefinger, which is totally new. I'm like, yes, just I love the fact that we can sit around and talk about predictions. Like, and I actually don't know. The book and the show have always been their own thing, and they complement each other. But now they're at the point where they're no longer necessarily on exactly the same path, and I think that's totally fine and acceptable and fun in its own right.
And then in the past, when the show has done things that are different, with like even with minor things, it's always been extremely exciting and almost like supportive in a sense of the book. In the sense where like what it's doing, it's a little bit different, but it reveals something new about it. Like it expands upon something that we already knew about a character or something like that. And it's always been really exciting. So I have complete trust in the show if they're deviating from their content and making up their own stuff, that they'll be fine. Yeah.
Total confidence in the showrunners at this point. One of my favorite scenes in the whole show, I mean, it's awkward and weird, is that Littlefinger monologue in season 1 where he's sitting in a brothel just laying out his motivations. It's great. It's like one of the best monologues I've ever seen in any TV show ever. And
some of my favorite scenes are with Arya and Tywin.
Yes.
That didn't happen either.
Arya and Tywin were really great.
So.
Lots of really great stuff out there. So now we're seeing them go into full-on original mode. It's not just, we're kind of adding into those gray areas. Now it's, okay, hey, we're doing our own thing here. Well, guys, before we wrap our show, let's go ahead and make sure to prehash next week's episode, The House of Black and White.
Oberyn is dead.
You don't have to remind me.
The House of Black and White. This is where you'll find the man you seek.
It's a threat.
I will burn their cities to the ground if they touch her.
All they understand is blood.
In the House of Black and White, Arya arrives in Braavos. Pod and Brienne run into trouble on the road. Cersei fears for her daughter's safety in Dorne as Ellaria Sand seeks vengeance for Oberyn's death. Stannis tempts Jon, and an advisor tempts Daenerys. Man, that is really descriptive. I know what to expect.
Vague.
So I know exactly what's going on in Jon's storyline next week. Obviously, like you guys said here, we get to see Arya go to knock on the door that has a black and white door. Huh? Faceless men, anybody? Are we gonna meet the faceless men yet? Maybe.
We're going to, and it's going to be amazing.
Oh man. Yeah, it's gonna be cool. We finally get to see Arya. For some reason, Arya always seems like she gets pushed to episode 2, but man, her storyline this season I think is gonna be a big deal. I think it's gonna be a really big deal. We also sounds like we're finally gonna pick up on the story thread from last season with Oberyn dead, aka we're gonna run into the Martells here finally. Because guess what? You brutally kill a guy, the same guy who killed the other, Martells, brutally murders a Martell at a wedding, for a Lannister wedding. Bad things are probably going to happen. I just want to say it's probably a given, right? And let's not forget, Myrcella, way back in season 2, Tyrion sent Myrcella to Dorne as kind of there's a term for it.
Insurance policy, basically.
Well, yeah, it was an insurance policy, essentially. It was a way to get... Tyrion had a good point at the time. He was sending her away to protect her from Stannis coming to attack Blackwater Bay. But it was also a very political move to kind of try and build relations with the people of Dorne. Now that the Lannisters and the Martells are probably not on having great relations, I would say she might be in danger. Just a thought. We're also going to get to see... It sounds like get to see some follow-up to that storyline with Jon and Stannis. I mean, what are you guys thinking?
I'm pretty excited. I did watch the preview, and we see dragons, which is good, and we see Arya, which is good, and that's pretty much all I need.
Arya and dragons. That's all I need in Game of Thrones. That's all I need.
We also see the threat. Basically, the Martells send a threat to Cersei. It's like a big head of a red viper. So I think we're going to see a lot of stuff really start to kick off. I mean, where episode 1 was a little lackluster, not a whole lot of excitement, I think this one's going to be big, and I think it's going to be great.
What if we started another war? They just got out of a war, like literally just got out of a war, and they go into war with the Martells. That would be nuts. And wouldn't that be crazy at this point in time?
Martells will steamroll them.
Well, I do want to point out that the Martells are technically the only kingdom that kingdom Dorne never bent the knee to Robert Baratheon ever, technically, unofficially. They kind of live in the southern Westeros. That it's kind of like Switzerland. Like no one ever goes down there because they don't have to, and no one wants to attack it because there's a mountain range in between that and the rest of Westeros. So they're like, you guys will just live with us, I guess. So. We'll see. We'll see what the Martells are up to. I think they're gonna be a big force this season.
I'm just excited to see Arya again. She's my favorite character, so I'm pumped for that.
She's gonna become Batman. She's going to beat thugs up in the night. She's gonna get epic training from who's gonna open the door? Liam Neeson is gonna open the door.
Ra's al Ghul.
It's gonna be Descartes, who we find out is a faceless man who is actually Ra's al Ghul. And then he's going to go and infiltrate Westeros and try to collapse it from the inside because it's so corrupt. See, flawless. All right. Well, hey guys, that is a wrap for our discussion of the season 5 Game of Thrones season 5 premiere, The Wars to Come. Very excited. I think we're all very excited to be back. Now, if you want to follow our show throughout the week, because we are going to have weeks in between each episode of the podcast, you can find us on iTunes. The best way you can support us is on iTunes, where you can please go and subscribe. It'd be even better. Not only subscribe, give us a star rating. Tell us what you think. If we think we're a great Game of Thrones podcast, give us 5 stars. That would be super awesome. If you think we're not the greatest podcast in the land of Westeros, you can give us 1 star. Just tell us what you think. Just tell us, give us a rating, let us know what you think. And then if you really feel strongly about us, good or bad, write a review. I dare you. If you want to follow our work, of course, you can always find our post on WeGotThisCovered.com. They're going to have all of our posts first. As soon as it's up on iTunes, you'll see it on WeGotThisCovered.com. Now, if you want to follow daily updates from us online, you can also follow us on the social media of Facebook. That's at facebook.com/castbeyondthewall. And lastly, if you've got a case of the Twitters and the tweets and you just got to let it out with 140 characters, you can find us at cast_beyond_GOT. Man, it feels good to be back, guys. Well, everybody, until next time when we review the episode of the House of Black and White, stay frosty. But no, I don't know. And Melisandre, as played by, oh crap, what's her name? I just watched her in Fast 7. She's really hot. Beside the point. I like it. All the screen time you want, lady. Give her all the screen time. Give her all the screen time. I'm good with that.